You work hard for your warehouse, but is your technology working as hard as you do? Don't you think your warehouse deserves that? Find that technology work ethic with the EPG One Unified Supply Chain Execution Suite that's built to arm warehouse leaders with tech that powers competitive edge. With modular solutions for WMS, WCS, TMS, workforce, doc, 3PL billing, control tower, and the number one voice picking solution named Lydia Voice, the EPG One suite gives you tech that works harder for your warehouse and the agility to help you scale with confidence and be built for what's next. Smarter, connected, and harder working logistics starts at epg.com. That's epg.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking robotics, and I'm going to be joined by someone who's been in the robotics space for some time and knows a thing or two about warehouse automation and robotics. And he's been on the show before, but he'll be joining us now at a new company. Mark Messina is going to join us. He's the managing director and CEO at Anscer Robotics, and we're going to learn all about Anscer, and we're going to also see what Mark's feelings are on the warehouse automation and robotics space right now, and also some different product offerings from Anscer and how maybe they're addressing some of the challenges that are out there in the market right now. So, Mark, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks very much, Kevin. I appreciate being back. It's been a while.
It has,
and I'm now with new company, Anscer Robotics, and we are an Indian-based company, and we have just started operations in the Americas, North and South, as well as APAC. So we're expanding through a pretty broad geography pretty rapidly.
Yeah, and I'm definitely interested to hear more about that and learn about some of the product offerings there as well. But I guess tell us a little bit about Anscer itself. Like how did the company come about, and what's kind of triggered this move into the Americas now?
Well, our founders are all roboticists. One of our founders is a sort of a serial entrepreneur, and they're all roboticists at heart. So they come from a different space from a lot of the industry. They've really focused on building robots that are, I guess, purpose built. They're very robust. We have a very solid design, and that's coming from the way the founders approached their design years ago. And they've matured it, it's part of the DNA of the robot itself, that it's easy to service, parts and sustainability are pretty well thought out, as is service. And the robots are different from what you might find in the market now, in that since they're quite robust, if you were to have a human interaction with a robot in terms of, I don't know, a human driving a fork truck or a human driving, pushing a pallet jack, something like this. Now, the fork truck, maybe you might dent it or something, but it's steel, which is unique on the market.
Yeah.
But in general, you're not going to damage our robot short of essentially crushing it. It's pretty stout in terms of its structure, and that's sort of in the company DNA. As I mentioned, the company is based in India, and so one of the fortes that India tends to be well known for is really good software. And I would say in this case, that is one of the benefits that we have. We have benefit from that reputation and that the robot has really solid software, a very nice UI. You can access the robot via a tablet or any browser, and you can see a lot about your operations, and you can modify your operations quite easily. And we can talk about how our robots are hybrid and that sort of thing later. But I think that's about it for that question.
Yeah, very interesting, and interesting to hear that too, because I think that software piece is such a critical aspect to robotics, right? Because you look at obviously the form factor and what it's capable of doing from payload perspective, how it can manipulate product or pallets or whatever it's interacting with certainly is important, right? But the software driving that is really kind of the differentiator, I think, in the market there. So, I mean, tell us a little bit, because you recently joined Anscer, right, earlier this year in 2025. So tell us, you worked at multiple different companies and you've been in the space for some time. So tell us kind of what got you excited, drew you into Anscer to be your next adventure here.
Sure. Let me step back in time a little bit.
Sure.
Or way back, I guess. I mean, I built my first robot when I was 14 or 15, based on a book I got at Radio Shack. And old, some of the older people in the crowd, they'll remember Radio Shack.
Yeah.
So I've always been into robotics, although back at that time they weren't, of course, nothing like what we can achieve today. But that interest stayed with me, and in 2012 I was with Kiva and witnessed and was part of Kiva becoming Amazon Robotics, which is really very few people have much awareness about. But the Amazon operations wouldn't operate without that automation behind them. So that's sort of the setting a bit of the trajectory. Since then, I've gone on to take a role similar to what I have now, leading a foreign company in the U.S. twice. This is my third time doing it. I guess I'm sort of getting good at it now. And so practice makes perfect, they say. And each time I always learn something, and I'm very fortunate to have a lot of people in the industry who have mentored me and that I keep very close contact with. Having been in the space since Kiva, which is really when AGVs sort of permeated any vocabulary and became valuable. And then that morphed into AMR. Anyway, what attracted me was that, I've been on this journey for a while. And so I think I'm able to recognize who might be a rising star and looking at the products and understanding the founders and where the company is on its journey, or was at the time that I joined in late January this year. I was able to recognize some things that looked to me like, okay, this is going to go somewhere. And that's something I like to be a part of. It's always good to get in to a company while it's still malleable. And the company is at a good state where it's malleable and I can have a good influence and share my experience. The founders are quite clever and I would say brilliant, but experience is also worth something. So I tend to be the voice of reason in the room, let's say, or something like this.
Sure.
And I bring some gravity to that, which is something I really enjoy. So those were the ingredients: the products, the founding team, the quality of where they were based on an early, being so early. It's about 4.5 years old. Answer. So that's why I joined.
Interesting, and very interesting to hear about that history too. I mean, from 14 years old, building that robot. I mean, you've done a lot in the space. So, and obviously, spending time with Kiva and some of your other roles as well. I mean, tell us. I'm very interested to hear, like, right now, like, what's kind of your current take on the warehouse automation space as a whole? Like, where are we as an industry?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you asking the question, where's my stuff, too often? Whether it's in your own warehouses, from your suppliers, or in your customer network, if you're not sure where your stuff is, then Surge Air has the solution for you. With SurgeAir's 99.9% accuracy, you're getting more than just supply chain visibility. You're getting the ability to orchestrate your supply chain and guide decisions in real time. Reduce the chaos in your supply chain and find operational truth with SurgeAir. Find your visibility and learn more at surgeair.com. That's surgeair.com.
Well, it's interesting having been part of Kiva and then witnessing robotics companies trying to become Kiva and warehousing companies and 3PLs and e-coms trying to be Amazon. It was really interesting. I look back on my time with Kiva and it's like the army. You love it and you hate it. It was great, but it was brutal because it was just there was so much work and there was so much low-hanging fruit for us to pick. And when I left Kiva, seeing, everybody was of Amazon and their IP, right, and their army of IP lawyers. Well, that inadvertently spawned this entire industry of Me Too robots outside of the U.S. So that was interesting, and understanding what they could duplicate well and what they couldn't was also very interesting. And it turns out one of those things is understanding the utility. As far as shiny objects goes, they saw that Amazon paid $750 million for Kiva. Yeah. Back in the day, that was a lot of money. Now that falls out of Elon's pocket, but today, that was a lot of money. And so they saw that and said, well, we can make robots that look like that. And so they did. And a whole industry, started. I was in China. I've been in China for 25 years. And at that time, when, after the acquisition, you could literally go to Shenzhen, China, and stand on a street corner and see 4 robot companies making something that looked like a Kiva robot.
Really interesting.
And so making something that looks like it is one thing, and making it work, especially software intelligence wise, is another. And that, to kind of take a little jump or another path that parallels this, at the same time, there were a lot of competitors in the e-com space, or at that time largely brick and mortar space, trying to get into e-com to compete with Amazon. And so, they were all quite happy to discuss how can they get these robots. And I and other people were more than happy to say, well, we can sell you these robots. And the biggest challenge that, it took years to really understand after customers bought these robots was that they couldn't be Amazon. Amazon was kind of built fundamentally on the ground up as a lean and agile company, and was very, as big as it was at the time, it was, not nearly as big as it is now. Not even a tenth as big as it is now. So they were very quick to change. It was nothing for Amazon to decide and commit, and then if it didn't work, okay, change direction and go do something else. It was fascinating. It was a great thing to witness and be a part of. And what, something that really drove these observations home was seeing other companies that weren't like that. So witness, other big brick and mortar companies that wanted to become retail or e-com or have an e-com arm. They had these really solidly cast silos within their companies, within their organizations. Some of these orgs were, 30, 50, 60 years old. They weren't changing quick. There were too many people embedded. And if you look at how Sears went, right? Not that Sears ever tried to do e-com seriously, but Sears died a slow death because there were a lot of people who were hanging on to a job that they started in high school and they were retiring from, and they wanted to get that retirement. And so whether it was good for the company or not, they weren't going to, a lot of people weren't changing too much.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with siloing. And when you try to fit something that requires you a bunch of your infrastructure and take a bunch of risk, well, the personal interest of, that's the company interest, but the personal interest of the executives and the leadership also comes into play at that point. And those things can conflict, where you probably should knock down a huge part of your company and take the pain to do it. If you look at the future where it's going, personally, people are always saying, well, what's in this for me? And for them, it's like, well, I'm going to lose my whole organization. And then what do? Well, guess what? You're not going to do anything. And unfortunately, that's materializing. It's just a slow moving train wreck in some cases. So, if you look around the e-com space, you can see there's been some interesting acquisitions. I won't name names, but there have been big companies, big retailers who bought robotics companies hoping they could fold them in and reap the benefits of automation. And to some small degree they have. But it's virtually impossible for them to set up to realize the efficiency that the big A gets. And my recommendation, I think others in the industry, Britain Lab for one, and others would say, hey, you know what? Leave your retail operations how they are and set up an adjacent company and let it be nimble and quick, and let it be a standalone e-com that maybe isn't that much associated with your parent company. And as it matures and grows, you never know, that small experiment may come to gobble up the parent company, which that's sort of the only transition that might be able to bridge that gap. So it's been a very interesting journey to witness how the market has gone. That's a little bit of history and why I think the way I do, having seen this happen firsthand. And where, you asked, where is the market going? Well, I think I think you can already witness there's going to be attrition in brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And human behavior is not making that any easier. I was just reading that in LA, because of the riots, they boarded up a bunch of malls. Well, first of all, nobody really wanted to shop at the malls anyway. Everybody was shopping in e-com, which required
a lot of the malls are empty anyway.
Yeah. And now, who wants to shop at a boarded up mall? Well, nobody.
Yeah.
And so, I totally understand why they boarded it up. I get it, but it's just one of the things that's sort of quickening the pace of the consolidation of the brick and mortar space, and further pushing for leaders in the e-com space, right? And so it can't all be one. The world isn't going to allow just one e-com player. We've got, Amazon sort of sticking out there as who that might be, but there's going to have to be competition, and we're seeing it. You've got Temu and TikTok Marketplace, which are really addressing a different generation, but this generation has a lot of money to spend, so it's not a bad market to address.
Yeah.
And then, we're going to see other players get into the fray. I don't want to name names because they're potential either past or present or future clients of mine, but you are starting to see where what I mentioned before, which is set up an adjacent business and just nurture it, because you've got a big war chest, you've got a bundle of money, but you can't. All that money isn't going to reform the silos that you've got. So set something up nimble. You can't fold the Amazon model into your business, but you can start it organically. And by the way, Amazon is getting a bit long in the tooth, right? It's not a young company anymore, and they are truly starting to get a bit siloed, which is really strange. But I think after, since the CEO change, they've really gone very process heavy, because they were like, well, process is good. We're a mature company. Well, that free form development and those small, pizza box sized teams that they call, those are super efficient. And that willingness to just throw some money out there, let's try it out. And if it fails, hey, fail fast and move on to the next thing. That is really important to be lean and agile and successful. And it seems to me that spirit could be waning for Amazon. But that's okay, because there's going to be other players who are stepping into the space. There has to be. There's always an evolution, right? And so, who's going to knock Amazon down? I don't know. That's a long time away. Yeah. But will it happen eventually? Yeah, it's inevitable, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it would be great if you knew because we could invest, right? But yeah, I mean,
For sure.
I think it's really interesting to hear those perspectives and interesting to hear about, creating this adjacent company to be able to do that. And I think you have a great point that it's, these companies, they've been around for so long and they're I mean, stuck in their ways, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. And which happens, right? I mean, that's what happens to
It's
us
human nature.
as humans
Just
do,
human
right?
nature.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
100% human nature.
yeah.
And as far as technology to come in this space, you know, the, we've had a solid 13 years of AGVs.
Hmm.
So anybody who's going to make value with an AGV and extract like a big win, that's though if they were in the market, they've already got it, and if they're new players, okay. The thing is that AGV can be a little bit prohibitive as far as technology goes. So let's talk
Right.
about AGVs and AMRs and the
Sure.
difference, right? AGV, if you think back 50 years ago, they had little Japanese robots, truly Japanese robots in Japan, and they would follow a little black line or a magnetic line, and they would play music.
Hmm.
I don't know why they did that, but they did. They all did that. And that stayed that way until essentially McMounts and Kiva showed up and decided, well, yeah, that line is great, but that's a pain. Let's use it. Doesn't tell us much about where we are or anything.
Hmm.
And he put QR codes on the floor, and he put QR codes. That was the base plane, but he also put QR codes on the ceiling plane of the pods that he was picking up. And his idea was great. His AGVs could pick up the inventory and move it to the human instead of a human having to go travel and waste a bunch of time walking, only to do the one thing they're good at, which is pick something off a shelf. That's
Right.
it. That's all we need them for. So his idea was great, and it again, I would say Amazon owes whoever, I forget who it was who decided to acquire Kiva, but
Hmm.
that was a brilliant acquisition because they saw Kiva at Zappos and they said, "What are these robots running around?" And Kiva had tried for a long time to get Amazon's attention and never could.
Mm.
And this gentleman who saw it, he initiated the acquisition. And he also said, "Well, wait a minute. We have a warehouse full of stuff. Why do we need shelving? We've got this mobile shelving and we see that. But why do we need to keep, everything discreetly the way it's always been done? Warehousing was always, okay, okay, there's televisions here, big ones, little ones,
Mm.
smaller, blah, 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 flour, dog food, all sort of segregated." And he said, "Well, wait a minute. If it fits in this pod that Kiva carries, why don't we just store it randomly?" And nobody really got it. And then he's like, "Well, the density goes way up. So if we paid $750 million for Kiva, well, then we don't suddenly all this real estate that we have in terms of warehousing just becomes much more dense, which guess what, guys? We don't have to build
Mm.
one or two warehouses, which pays for the acquisition." Worked out great. Nobody saw the math on that, but that was the math, and it worked out really
Interesting.
well. And so, as far as technology goes, AGV certainly has its place, but AGV is very restrictive, right? It's going
Mm.
to pick up a pod, and I'm using the Kiva example, an inventory pod, and it's going to carry it from point A to point B using a grid of QR codes. And if those QR codes are interrupted, it just says, "I quit. Go get me a human, fix whatever this problem is, and we can start again."
Mhm.
If something falls off the inventory pod, the robot struggles. It's not going to navigate its way around it. It's just going to stop.
Mhm.
That's it. It's a safety feature, but the point of that is you can't have humans interacting with the AGV field, and that applies generally to all AGVs. Now you can have AGVs. You can use them around humans if you equip them with the correct safety devices, but that limits their utility and their efficiency because if something drops on the floor, it's still going to wait until a human figures it out because it can't navigate off of its path. It's like having that black line. The black line is just made up of breadcrumbs in the form of QR codes.
Mm.
So AGV certainly has a very valuable place, as proven by Amazon, right? They've that design that we started with in 2012 or so. I hear that they've built like 700,000 of them. And by the way, they don't sell them; they just use them in Amazon.
Yeah.
So that's like amazing. When I hear, one of my competitors talk about, oh, we're going to build 3,000 robots this year. It's a great year. Okay, yeah, I get it. It is a great year for an independent company, but that's dwarfed in reality, right? So anyway, so the next phase of technology, which is only prevalent in the last couple of years, it's been, I guess, around but immature, and now it's gaining some maturity, I would say, in the last year and a half or so, which is AMR.
Mm-hmm.
So AGV follows the line, whether it's a virtual line of breadcrumbs or a continuous line. It doesn't work well where there's humans or obstacles or real things that you have to deal with. But AMR uses a variety of different sensors. You can pick one, whether it's LiDAR or cameras or something else. And it navigates, basically you make it a map of the environment. So you can use a drone, or you can use a human walking around with an iPhone, or a human walking around with LiDAR, or the robot can use its own LiDAR to create a map of the environment. And then a human edits that map and says, okay, these are things you can't mess with, and the rest of this space is all yours. And the robot uses the landmarks that it laid out and the human edited, and now it navigates freely. So if somebody's walking around and they walk in the path of the robot, it just slows down or it stops, and if the human passes, it just keeps on going. Or if somebody puts a pallet down or a trash can, or I don't know, they drop a pretzel or whatever, the robot's going to navigate around it. It's kind of like a Roomba, right? Roombas were pretty intelligent. The first Roombas were just random. They would just bounce off of things and randomly eventually cover the whole floor. But Roombas now, they're sort of like a hybrid, which is what we'll get to. But in terms of a hybrid, they're using a forward-looking camera. Some of them have LiDAR, the more expensive ones, but they're using a forward-looking camera to look for obstacles, and they're actually using the ceiling to create a map of the environment. So they can raster instead of just randomly. They'll raster your whole floor. And if there's an obstacle, they'll come back and check later, is that obstacle gone? Which is pretty darn smart.
Yeah.
That's AMR, right? Now, I used the Roomba, but technically AMR is in the factory or the warehouse. It's a similar principle. And so that brings us to our latest development, where AMR is probably best. If I was thinking about where to split AGV and AMR, I'm going to use AGV where I need very precise storage of inventory. Meaning, I want to think about the pods. I want to store them as close together as I can, because I don't want a bunch of air taken up by 3 inches gap between every pod if I can make that gap an inch. If I've got 100,000 pods, that adds up to a lot of volume.
Yeah.
So I'll use AGVs there because that's what they're really good at. They're just precise. They're not flexible, but precise. And AMR, maybe I would apply that after I bring the goods to the person they're picked, and I need them to go to the next station, which is where humans work. And I have to have these robots interacting with humans, but I don't necessarily want to have the format that have a big sorter or a giant conveyor belt that costs, number one, a lot of money, but is also, I can't change it. If I change my operations, I can't change that thing easily. It's major surgery. So I'm going to use the AGV there and the AMR here. So now what about this hybrid thing that I was mentioning? AMR is good at that point in the warehouse, but it's also got a great application for factories, right? Because factories inherently have humans in them that have to interact with doing things that robots don't do well, because industrial robots, 6-axis robots, whether they're collaborative or not, they tend to be pretty limited. When you've made something that works, it doesn't adapt. That's it. That's what it does.
Yeah.
So AMR is adaptable. AGV is kind of inflexible. And then we talk about the latest generation of robots, which is hybrid, and they're pretty darn new. I would say they're starting to become prevalent in the last yearish, and that's one of the things that Anscer excels at is hybrid. So the hybrid basically fuses the two robots together. You've got all of the flexibility of fused navigation between LiDAR and cameras.
Okay.
So we can navigate freely around people. We can get very close to people without any worries. We can work around fork trucks. We work in natural environments with these hybrids. But you say, well, okay, that's great. But what about the hybrid part? Well, the hybrid part is when you get to the endpoint, let's say you're in a factory and you're taking, you need to carry something and drop it off or pick it up at a very precise point, because factories tend to be places of precision. So we'll drop a QR code at that point very precisely where we want it. Let's say you're taking molded parts off of an injection molding machine. That's a pretty precise location. So we'll navigate using AMR until we get to that point where we need to be precise, and then we flip over to AGV. So that's the hybrid. And that's got applications in factories and warehouses, and we can get into all that. Other places where I see the technology going, I've seen some really, I hate to mention Amazon again, but I have to, because they've got the, back in 2014, they were doing the bin picking challenge. So they had, challenge going out for schools like MIT and Stanford and whoever else wanted to play globally to do bin picking by robot, which means reaching into a bin and, reach into a bin of golf balls, take one golf ball. That's not too hard. Doing it blindly, it's a bit more hard. Reach into a mixed bin of all sorts of stuff and pick me out the pencil, the green one. That's impossible, right?
Yeah.
But Amazon, being Amazon, has figured out how to pick an item. Now, I can't say they're going to pick the green pencil out of a bin of random stuff, but since they are domain experts in how they store their stuff, their goo is stored logically how they want it stored. So as they've introduced this bin picking robot, I would guess that they have said, well, okay, store like things together in these bins, but we'll still randomly locate the bins. So we may have a box of green, one bin of green pencils on 40 different pods, and we're going to pepper those pods throughout the warehouse randomly so that there's always a very short path to picking, which means we're just more efficient. So that's a very interesting development. And, Amazon's not selling that to anybody. They do it for themselves. But then, as far as what's commercially available, I'm seeing, mini loads, which have been around for a bit, and they're quite nice. It's like an ASRS, but very flexible. Now we've got mini loads that have a 6-axis robot attached and can take a tote from, 8 meters up, pick an item out of it and drop it into a tote that it's keeping and put the tote back. How much faster is that than pulling that tote, sending it somewhere for some picker to take whatever they want out of it, and then sending it all the way back and putting it up there? Yeah, it's like so much more efficient. If you had an army of these, it's great. And then, we've seen goods to person robots, and that is a very interesting space because most companies are not ready to, as much as they see the value, they're still reticent to take the plunge and say, we're going to build a new warehouse and make it fully automated, because they just don't know how to do it. And there's nobody who can really do it end to end for them. So they have to take some responsibility if it doesn't work, right? They can't just blame a vendor. I'm calling it what it is.
Yeah.
But in this bin picking, or in the what I would call the brownfield space, this market is, I think, vast compared to the greenfield space, right? Where people are going and saying, okay, I'm going to build a new warehouse, design me a great warehouse that fits my business exactly. There's not a lot of clients out there anymore who are doing that. The low-hanging fruit's gone. Now it's, okay, we have to convince people to make that plunge. And maybe there's usually financial reasons they haven't done it already. But when you look at the brownfield space, with labor being what it is, that's it's a huge space. And it's just getting more and more difficult for those operators to be competitive.
Yeah.
And to provide their clients value that they can also be competitive. So it's a cascading problem. So, the brownfield space, I think, is the next frontier where we're going to see some really interesting stuff. Locus is out there. They're doing, they've been in the market for a long time.
Yeah.
They started out at Quiet Logistics because Kiva said, we're not going to service you anymore. So,
Yeah.
it was a great move. Oh, you're not going to service? Great. We'll figure it out. We'll make something. And they did. And that, I have to say good for Boston, because Boston has become a fantastic robotics hub. And being a Boston guy, I love it. I think it's great. I just want to see more of it. So that, back to the brownfield, we're going to see robots that help humans walk less and pick more. Locust does that. Six River does that. Other people are getting into that space. But we're also going to see robots, like I mentioned about this bin picking robot that has a 6-axis robot incorporated. And as the algorithms get better and better, well, human workers, sorry, we don't need you as much to do what you're good at, because now we have a robot that does it. Right? And the ROI, the more those labor rates go up, when you're paying somebody to pick inventory $20 an hour, the math gets pretty unfavorable for the human, right? And depending where you are in the country, that's not that unusual. Yeah. So I talked a lot. I hope I took you a little bit of the way. I can dive a bit deeper. I'm happy to talk about humanoids. As a matter of fact, I will. I'll just very briefly touch on that, because
let's hear your thoughts on that. Yeah.
Huge amount of attention on humanoids, and I don't care if it's humanoid, biped, quadruped. I think there's going to be, all right. So segue a little bit, detoured a little bit. There was a post on LinkedIn. Somebody posted that there was a study by a bank that, or maybe it was Forbes, and they said there's going to be 1 billion robots by 2050, and the market's going to be $1 trillion.
Yeah,
I was a little bit shocked to see a lot of people that I know saying, "Nah, not going to happen." And they said that's not right. And I don't know if I was the only one, but I responded and said, "You guys are absolutely correct. It's totally wrong. It's going to be more than 1 billion. And I don't care about the money. It's, if you think about how many cell phones we each have, probably every American has a drawer full of cell phones that they've gone through till they got the latest one in their hand.
Yeah.
So as far as building at scale, it's not a big deal. And the economics, I don't think that's a big deal. Supply chain, not a big deal. These are very precise devices. The rate of change, if you think about it, Boston Dynamics has been at this for 25 or 30 years. And, you see where they are now. It took them a long time. But the rate of change, technology develops exponentially faster and faster.
Yeah.
So, we've gotten very far. It's taken a while. And we're going to go much further. And it's going to happen very fast. So humanoids have a place. Is it warehousing? I don't know. I think there'll be other avenues, but I would say that the learnings from humanoids certainly don't have to be constrained to bi or quadruped robots. A robot that is dexterous, that's on wheels, you got me, man. I'm sold. That, if it's dexterous and can get around the warehouse without having to walk, how much faster is it going to go? I don't want a humanoid running like Running Man down an aisle. I want it driving on wheels, right?
Yeah.
So humanoids will certainly have their day, and I use humanoid broadly, not just biped, but anatomically similar robots, let's say.
Okay.
But the magic is in the dexterity and the algorithms behind the dexterity. I think the things that stand in the way tend to be sensing and perception, whether that's camera or other sensors, and that's maturing pretty quickly, and algorithm development. And algos used to be the long pole in the tent, but now with AI, hate to use that term, but yeah, with AI, we can iterate on algorithms and their capabilities so much faster. So this is accelerating the entry of robotics, especially dexterous robotics, tremendously. Anyway, that, like I said, that was a little segue as far as other technologies. the brownfield space where humans are still necessary, because I don't think we're going to see a fully lights out warehouse is achievable for the majority of warehousing. Certainly, there'll be some company with deep pockets and great long and deep experience in automation that will make that work. And they can, if they own their business end to end and they can formulate it to match that, they can do that. It's not impossible. But that's not going to be a huge market. There's too many companies that just don't have enough demand nor capital to do that. Right. So brownfield is still kind of a great space. Anyway, I think I kind of hit that. I've talked, and I think I don't want to block you out of your own interview here. So
no. I mean, super interesting to hear your thoughts like on the space and diving deep there, because I think it's you obviously have a lot of experience in the space and you've seen a lot of evolution and things like that. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. And so I guess maybe the question here would be, where does Anscer kind of fit into all of this, and where are you addressing this part of the market? I mean, are you looking more at brownfield, or where are you kind of landing when as you're entering the Americas market and expanding now as well?
I think the e-com market is pretty saturated. There's a lot of Me Too robots out there, right? There's a lot of robots that look the same, do the same thing, have the same issues regarding especially their software. Somehow they all seem to be from the same stack. I don't know how that could be, but it does seem to be. And so that space is pretty full. I'm not necessarily, I'm not discounting that space entirely, but it's not my core focus. We'll play in that space. And there's, as I mentioned, there's segments of the warehouse, whether it's the storage or the post-pack out transportation, just from picking to the trailer, that sort of thing. That's, there's spaces where we can play very well in the warehousing space, and we do. We do have our first customer in the U.S. is a well-known 3-letter shipping company, and we're already deploying, and that's in one of their DCs and expanding quickly on that footprint. So I'm not discounting that space at all. However, Anscer's roots being very heavy duty robots at a good price, we also like the factory space, and timing being what it is, it's not such a bad time, because with the new administration, there's a big push to boost employment via manual labor, right?
Yeah.
Like factories, among other things. And so you can't have a factory be completely manual. You'll just never be able to compete. You need automation. And so we see that as a great space. We're going after, we're in that space. We're going after, we're especially in that space outside of the US. We've got some very well-known big European brands that we are operating in their factories. And those factories can be basic operations or very high-tech operations, but we're operating at both ends of that spectrum. And so we're bringing that to the US, and that's one area. And then back to the warehousing space, as I mentioned, brownfield is a big space. So with our current, we've got pallet movers, pallet lifters, we've got tuggers, we've got AGVs and AMRs, hybrids, and so we have a variety of form factors that we can play in the warehouse or the factory. And then a new area for us is this brownfield market that I am really keen to push on very heavily. As I mentioned, I think it's an underserved market, and it's due for some new players and also some innovation. And so that's where we're coming in. And Anscer, one of the things that I can't say is just about Anscer, but one of the benefits of having worked globally for as long as I have, I've been traveling around the world monthly for more than 25 years and have been working with or working for and leading foreign companies for 7 or 8 years now. That long-term exposure to these different cultures is great. I love seeing the different cultures, and some of them have some interesting good qualities and otherwise. And one of the things that I like about Answer is they are inherently an Indian company in their spirit.
Mm.
And so we do things at Answer, and it's, I would say, value based.
Okay.
Very value based. Like, it's not just, is it shiny? I'm not terribly concerned about, is the robot sexy? I'm concerned about, hey, after 10 years, you have, if somebody's buying a robot, it's not just a 1-year deal.
Right.
This thing needs to make value for 10 years, like minimum. And I would say longer than that if your operations are stable. And the longer you run it, the better the payback, right? It's just like a car. A car is a terrible investment. It's not an investment at all. And if you don't drive it till the wheels fall off, you're throwing your money away.
Yeah.
So, if you either you're not mechanically inclined, or ego is coming into play when you buy a new car at 2 years, right? It just doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing with robotics. They have to fit into your operations long term. They have to be reliable. They can't have much downtime. They can't require a lot of service, and they have to have spare parts available like forever. So that's one of the things that Answer was saying. At the same, I've been saying that for a long time, but Answer said it to me before I said it to them, and I was like, oh, these guys get it. So that was a good match.
All right, interesting. And I would definitely be looking forward to seeing kind of the penetration in the market and how Anscer continues to grow across the globe here. And definitely really appreciate you coming on today and sharing all these really interesting insights. I mean, all this kind of history as well as kind of what's going on in the market now and how it's going to continue to evolve and where some of the gaps are and things like that. Some really interesting perspectives and thoughts here. So really appreciate you sharing that with us today, Mark, and appreciate you coming on the show. If people are interested in learning more about Anscer or getting in touch, what's the best way to do that?
You can find us, on LinkedIn, find Chris Harbor, my head of sales in the US, or at anscer.com, which is ANSCER.com. Visit our website where you can see our whole product lineup. And we've got a really interesting release now, which is the LBR robot. It's a pallet mover, but it's omnidirectional. So it's not just X and Y, right? It's a very interesting robot with holonomic wheels for the pallet moving space. And we have some other new products coming out as well. So just keep tuned and keep watching. Our product line is nicely broad for tugging, pallet moving, AGV, AMR, and we've got some innovations coming out that I like a lot. And the LBR is available now, so I'm happy to talk about that. But my style is not to talk about something until I've seen it and know that it's fully ready for the market. So we've got some new products that are in the pipeline, which I'm excited about, but don't want to mention until they're
okay.
Put a finger on it and kick them.
All right. As soon as you can kick them, then we'll definitely talk about them and looking forward to seeing that. So we'll end it on that little tease here for new products coming and new innovations. So definitely excited to see how Anscer continues to evolve and excited to talk to you again in the future about it, Mark. So really appreciate your time on the show today. And we will definitely put all the information about Anscer and how to get in touch with them at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes. So thank you once again for your time today, Mark.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.